it certainly had difficulties, but obviously when I became leader in July 2009, I faced 8 months to bring us from where we were to an election, so that was pretty difficult as well.
Yeah, I guess that period was overshadowed by what happened with the Premier.
Yeah, but that's not to say we weren't out there. We weren't out there, you know, we were working all that time, and I had to establish relationships across, you know, the business sector, the community sector, just being out there in the public, and, you know, so that had its difficulties, and it was very full on. You know, yeah, it's been a difficult year in some ways, but, you know, people say that leader of the opposition is the worst job in politics, and for the most part, I actually enjoy it. You know, there are always, in any job, things that you don't like, and sometimes things you prefer weren't happening, but I enjoy the job.
I think the reason why I asked that question is the outside perception is that some of your colleagues have been, I suppose, talking about you, undermining you, however you want to put that. And people in the ordinary world, I think, find that distressing in a workplace. And I'm just wondering how you cope with that, if you accept the premise of the question.
Well, I don't necessarily accept the premise of the question, but, you know, I actually think that people in the normal world aren't paying that much attention to any of this. And, you know, personally, in terms of how I cope with all of those things, you have to be able to just slough most of it off. I mean, you know, for anyone who's in the public eye, whether it's as a celebrity in, you know, TV and movies or in politics or whatever, if you start believing your own publicity, then you're in strife. And so I tend to just sort of put that aside. I know a lot of the time what's really happening, and I do find it frustrating at times that I can be confronted with assertions that are based on some grain of truth somewhere, but they've gone off on a completely tangential interpretation that I can't correct without breaching confidences, so I have to just let that go. But, you know, you have to be focused on the bigger issue all the time, and the bigger issue for me is getting better government in this state.
Has it been frustrating for you that you've been distracted from that, or prevented from that?
It's always frustrating not to be able to get your message out, and, you know, I would agree that there's been a level of, you know, frustration with having to focus on things that aren't, to me, relevant to what's relevant to the people of the state. And but, you know, we are still more than 16 months out from an election.
Which is a long time.
Well, yeah, we all know that in politics, you know, anything. I mean, you know, when I came in 8 months before the election last time, and we managed to get within a whisker of winning that election. So a lot can happen in a relatively short time in politics.
I also know that politics is a very relentless life.
Yeah.
Do you have ways to escape from it?
Yes, and I'm probably sort of ideally placed in the sense that my kids have now grown up, so I don't have any other commitments to worry about, and so I don't play team sports or anything anymore because you just can't commit to anything but this job. But I like to walk and get to the gym when I can, and, you know, I've got a treadmill at home and stuff, so if I can't get to the gym. And I love to get out in my garden and things like that. And I do make a point of trying to catch up with family and friends. It has to be on a very ad hoc basis, and in fact I've now introduced having a family meal night once a fortnight, because I was finding that my kids have all left home and I just wasn't seeing them. For weeks, sometimes months at a time, I wouldn't see them. And so I've introduced a sort of fortnightly family meal, and even though I haven't got time to shop and cook, they're happy to come and have takeaway Thai or takeaway Indian that they can't afford, so we catch up. And I read a lot too.
Yeah? Fiction?
No, mostly histories, biography, sociology, that sort of stuff. I only generally read fiction on the rare occasions I get to go on holidays, and I only get usually, you know, 2 weeks leave a year. So
you've I don't think there's many political pundits around town who thought you would survive this year.
I wish I'd had time.
It's not over, but
I wish I'd had time to put a bet on myself.
Are you they underestimated? Have they underestimated the party, or have they underestimated how tough you are as an operator?
Look, I don't think that it's a matter of being tough. I mean, certainly you need a certain resilience in the job, but I've never taken the view that this job is about sort of thumping the table and showing how tough you are. The nature of political leadership to me is more about making sure that the team is all on board with where you want to go. And, you know, if you read, have you ever read a corporate book called Good to Great? It's quite a well-known corporate text sort of thing. And Good to Great is, Good to Great is, it's a book that examines, an American book unsurprisingly, and they got a whole team of researchers and they spent about 5 years doing the research. And what they tried to identify was they took a whole series of companies across different sectors and said, why did these companies that were good companies actually manage to outperform their peer companies in their sector by more than a certain percentage over a sustained period of time? And so, you know, they had different companies in different sectors. And these researchers then, and it was a very qualitative rather than quantitative research, and I prefer that. And basically they looked at all the different elements and they found that, you know, it wasn't to do with how much people were paid, for instance, but it had to do with actually having a clear direction for where you wanted to go. And you know, the first thing it says in this book is, first get the right people on the bus. Well, in a corporation you can do that. You can actually decide who's on the bus and who's not, and you can dismiss people. But in politics, you don't get to decide who's on the bus. So you've got a different dynamic. You've got to actually make it work with the team that you've been delivered by the electorate. And so, you know, but I still do think very much in terms of, you know, the basic ideas of how do we do the task. And the task for us is getting better government in this state, which I believe clearly means getting a Liberal government in 2014. How do we effectively achieve that? So it's never been about being tough in that sense. But that said, there's an element of toughness just in being able to slough off all that irrelevant stuff that's happening around you in terms of reports. And as I said, there's a lot of things that you get pretty upset about when you see reports that have no basis in fact, but you can't do anything about it.
Is it